The QUOYA K1 Smart Lock is water resistant. However, water can get through the fingerprint reader, and eventually through time the water could cause the lock some permanent damage. So if you want to increase the durability of the smart lock, especially if this lock is being used outdoors, you really want to watch this whole video and follow our tip in terms of how to overcome that problem. The second thing is that with rainwater, if it's constantly being exposed to rainwater outside, rainwater does cause the lock to activate, which means eventually if rainwater do land and collect through the fingerprint reader, you will drain the battery, and that's not what we want to happen. In this video, we'll show you a way that you can overcome all of these issues. The trick is very simple. All you need is just some cling film and some tape. With the cling film, all you want is cut into a size of around the black parts of the lock. So just a small little rectangle, and that would do. Now you have a small piece of cling film that's roughly the same size as the fingerprint reader, about the same size as the black part of the smart lock. Make sure it's fully covering the fingerprint reader, just like that. Next, get some tape. It doesn't need to be a lot. You want to cut a piece of tape that is exactly the same length of the lock. It's about that. And taking just the edge of the cling film, stick it to the lock just like that. Hold like that. Repeat the process to the other side of the cling film. So this time when attaching it, stick it to the cling film first, but this time you want to pull just slightly so that the cling film is quite tight around the lock. So you don't want it loose, you want to pull it just slightly and then stick it down. So you create a really nice tight, so that what you should end up with is the cling film being pulled on each side, and it creates a bit of a barrier on your fingerprint reader. Next, you also need to do the bottom edge of the fingerprint reader. So this time you don't need the tape to be too long, just to cover the bottom edge of the fingerprint reader, and that's enough. Just a bit of tape. You might also want to cut the tape halfway as well, so that we don't overflow through the edge of the lock. So you just want a little bit of thin piece of tape just to cover this section of the lock, and it will be sufficient. So just a thin strip of tape. This time, again, try to pull downwards so that you're making the cling film quite tight around the fingerprint reader and secure. And finally, repeat on the top edge. So thin piece of tape. Try to pull it tight. And that's it, done. So once it's done nicely, it just creates a really nice barrier to the fingerprint reader. It also creates a water barrier, so if there is rainwater, what you'll notice is that it will no longer trigger the fingerprint reader. So if it does rain, you'll notice that it will not trigger the fingerprint reader, and it will not cause any battery drain. What you've also done is that you've completely waterproofed the whole lock, which means that any sort of water will not be able to get inside the lock, which will increase the lifespan of the lock. So if your lock is being used outdoors, I strongly recommend that you do this slight modification to the lock just to give it this extra layer of protection. The good thing about cling film is that it's a very thin layer, which means the fingerprint reader will still work every single time.